welcome to episode 74 of Mitolife Radio. I'm your host, Matt Blackburn. Today, I'm speaking with Loren de la Cruz of Innate Nutrition. Loren's awesome because she went through the indoctrination schooling system, same as me, and still came out with the logical parts of her brain intact. That's very rare. It's very rare because people spend a lot of money, and because they spend a lot of money, they believe that what they were taught must be true, and so they just hold on to it, even if it's been proven false. Like, for example, sugar is bad for you. Loren graduated from the Nutritional Therapy Association in Washington, and I was looking through their courses, and I'm sure they have some decent stuff in there, but one of their courses right on top, 21-day sugar detox coaches program. That's unfortunate. And I see a lot of people, catering to celebrities and people that want to lose weight and weight loss, and it's really ridiculous. And we actually touch on weight loss and cellulite a little bit in this interview. But we mostly focus on overall women's health, especially women that have taken birth control. And I was shocked at the statistics that she shared, the numbers of women and why they're taking birth control and what happens to the women that take birth control. Crazy stuff. It really imbalances the body. And Loren put it really eloquently by saying that it shuts down the connection between the reproductive system and the brain. And that made sense to me. That's easy to understand. But I love interviewing smart women like her that understand the female body, because there's so much false information out there. I get messages all the time about folate supplementation and prenatals and what prenatals and multivitamin and multimineral supplement. And we talk about all of that in this show as well. We have a pretty lengthy Q&A, and a lot of the questions are very common questions that I get all the time. What are the nutritional needs while nursing? What's the deal with coffee? What's the best way to drink it? Estrogen dominance tips. Is it ever good to fast or cleanse? Is it true that you should avoid sugar with the UTI? Really great questions and awesome answers. So without further ado, here is Loren de la Cruz. Thanks for taking the time to come on. I found you through Instagram, and this kind of whatever you want to call it, repeat style or like bioenergetic kind of community, it is really interesting. It's a small community, but once you find the information and you do the research, it's not all just coming from one guy, Dr. Raymond Pete, because he references Dr. Hans Selye and Broda Barnes and all these MDs and doctors from back in the day that no one's ever heard of, Albert St. Georgi. And when you start to look into their work and CO2 and serotonin and estrogen or stress hormones and all these things just make sense, and you start to see how everyone's not getting better, and all these practitioners are just slamming pills down people's throats and protocols and nice and flush and all, and you're like, wow. Yep. Well, and then you try this new approach and it actually works, right, with your clients. It's a game changer.
It's so true. It is. Yep. I've definitely, once I found this community, I'd originally gone through the Nutritional Therapy Association, which is a great start. It's a great foundation. It's based on Weston A. Price's work. Sally Fallon is a really, headstrong lady leading the charge there. And I agree with a lot of what they have to say. Fat soluble vitamins are amazing. and just an ancestral-ish diet um, is also good. But there's also stuff that I don't agree with. So that's when I started really researching and diving into the community. And when I found Ray Peat, things started really connecting for me. Um, and then as well as Morley Robbins, I can't forget about him. I did go through his program, and just, it totally blew my mind. Things just made even more sense than ever before. So, yes, there's lots to offer.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Morley's kind of almost the opposite perspective of Ray Peat as far as diet goes. It's like the exact
Hmm.
opposite. So it's kind of cool how everyone has their own piece of the puzzle. No one has the whole picture. Even Ray
Right.
Peat, who's like amazing.
Yes. So, you kind of have to take what you like and what resonates with you, and then make your own decisions and come to your own terms. But yeah, there's so much amazing information.
So that's awesome that you came from like a Weston A. Price Foundation background, because I feel like a lot of people get stuck there, especially in like the carnivore community, where it's like
Hmm.
slamming saturated fat, which might not always be a good thing, right? There's something to be said about going lower fat sometimes.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah.
Was there anything you changed after finding Morley's work, like in your personal protocol? Like, did you start eating more beef liver?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I had taken beef liver, desiccated beef liver, um, you know, even before I went to the Nutritional Therapy Association. Um, I had started actually doing research on post-birth control syndrome, and that was one of the supplements that was highly recommended. Um, it's kind of like a multivitamin in a way. It is really. It's also an amazing source of vitamin A. So, I had taken it on and off, not too seriously though. And then when I found Morley, I started incorporating more copper sources into my diet. So whole food vitamin C, liver. I try to make liver pate every once a week. Um, and yeah, and some chlorophyll as well. Uh, so, trying to just continuously upgrade my health based on the things that I'm researching.
That's awesome. Yeah, because isn't the center of chlorophyll copper? It's a copper-based molecule, pretty much.
The center of chlorophyll is actually magnesium. It's
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm.
chlorophyllin.
Mm.
Chlorophyllin is copper. So, if you're taking chlorophyll with both in it, it's great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I used to take the chlorophyll extract when I was a crazy sun gazer quantum health guy. And I would like stack like five things and then go roast in the sun at noonday in the ice bath. But chlorophyll was trying to absorb
Uh,
more light. That was a wild time.
I'm sure. I'm sure you were very tan.
I never burned though. I mean, that's I don't know if you saw the study about chlorophyll allowing mammalian cells to generate more ATP. It was like a study that came out I think like 5 or 6 years ago. It's a recent one.
I'm not sure.
But,
I'm not as good as recalling studies as Morley is. I will say that, but it's possible. I've seen it. Maybe not though.
yeah, I don't know how Ray and Morley do that. It's like photographic memory. It's like the dates and the names of the scientists and the. It's like I don't
Yes,
know if I'll ever
it's
have that
incredible.
ability. um, so post birth control syndrome. Is this something that you've been working with clients with for a while, or how did you kind of get into that?
Yeah, so I was actually my first client, and I do work with clients on it a lot, pretty frequently. So it's, yeah, are you familiar with what it is? Because I'm happy to dive into it.
No, yeah, if you can explain like kind of what it is and start from the basics.
Yeah, yeah. So post-birth control syndrome it was coined by Dr. Jolene Brighton, and that's how I became aware of it. I'd come off the pill. I was feeling I had all of these symptoms. I felt absolutely terrible. Um, and it's basically a constellation of symptoms that, women experience after they discontinue hormonal birth control. So it could be anything from adult acne to loss of period to infertility. Infertility is a potential side effect of birth control. Uh, Pill-induced PCOS, hypothyroidism, gut dysfunction, autoimmune disorders. Um, you know, it's so let me backtrack a little bit because a lot of women take the pill for these symptoms. Um, so I believe it's something like 60% of women take hormonal birth control for symptoms, not to prevent pregnancy. So obviously there's an issue, there's a bigger issue at large. Um, and the birth control pill, it just kind of masks these symptoms, and it could potentially give you new ones when you come off of it. Um, so in that sense, it's like the body speaking up. Uh, Morley has talked about down regulation versus suppression. So a down regulation is, retinol does this. It's like coaxing a child and calming them down by nuzzling your forehead against theirs, whereas suppression is like telling them to go to your room or using physical force. So obviously, like suppression, we know that there's a higher risk of things backfiring on you majorly, and causing even more damage to the kid. So it's your body basically speaking up and really telling you, okay, you need to really focus on me now. Um, and it can last. It generally occurs within the first 4 to 6 months after stopping the pill, but they're not going to go away unless you address them. They don't just magically disappear. It can take as long as 9 months to normalize your cycles. I think it's somewhere around 40% of women have irregular cycles after coming off the birth control pill, and that's not even, including any other of their symptoms or issues. So women are already having trouble getting their menstrual cycle back and experiencing things like post-pill amenorrhea, so that's no cycle. And so there's just this influx of issues that just keep coming. And me personally, I got my period within 3 months, but I had 2 week long periods for 3 months, and I didn't actually start ovulating until a year and a half after I stopped birth control. So there's a difference between an ovulatory cycle and an anovulatory cycle. You can still get your period but not ovulate, and that's what you want. You want to ovulate, to really experience the full benefit of all the hormones of your cycle. So even if you do get your period, it doesn't mean everything's fixed. It can take some time and a lot of healing to really fix these things, because you're dealing with things that have been, depending on how long you've been on the pill, that have been suppressed for 8, 10, 15 years. So it's like starting from the ground up again.
Is this something that they would just kind of promoted, say they, but we won't get into that, but just kind of promoted as something safe, like, hey, there's no side effects, birth control is awesome, Planned Parenthood is just throwing them out like candy? Was it kind of like that got this whole thing started?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what I was told when I got on the pill. And I got on the pill for my skin. So again, going back to symptoms, I was dealing with terrible cystic acne, and this was after having done 2 years of a vegan diet. So, there's problem number one. I was on a vegan diet, and vegan diets are extremely retinol deficient. And you're taking supplements, you're eating just things that you shouldn't be, that are not naturally occurring, like uh, like gluten protein, I forget what they call it, texturized gluten protein and soy, and it's just things that your body, it's not going to benefit your body. So I was in a hypometabolic state, and even Broda Barnes has written in his book, Hypothyroidism, the Unsuspecting Illness, that acne is very much aligned with hypothyroidism. So I think I was hypothyroid, I was vitamin A deficient, and I was iron toxic. I had definitely grown up in a household where we ate cereal every morning. We ate, fortified foods, and so it was all of this kind of like coming to a head. But me being like 20 years old, I had no idea how to fix things. I thought the vegan diet was the answer, so I was completely at a loss on how to fix my health. And so I was in college, and all of my roommates were on the birth control pill, all of them. And I was pretty much the the minority across campus, because every single woman that I knew was on the birth control pill. So I was like, if it's so bad, then why are all these women on it? And no one else seems to be having problems. So I went to the doctor there. You can get free healthcare as a student at NYU, at least during my time, it was like that. And so I went to her. I said I'd like to get the birth control pill for my skin, and she just gave it to me. No questions asked, no warnings about what could happen. I did ask her, what happens when I come off. She's like, oh, it's super easy. Don't worry about it. So you can imagine, I just started taking it, and I was on it for 8 years. And coming off of it was pretty much like a 3-year process for me, in terms of not only healing my cycle, but healing my metabolism. So yes, I think it's too loosely promoted. It has so many, uh, in my vision, contraindications. So it's kind of like in epigenetics, there's the bullet and then there's the trigger. Birth control can be the thing that pulls the trigger for a lot of women. If they weren't, predisposed, or if they were predisposed to like gallbladder disease or cardiovascular disease or cancer, genetically, they would have been fine if they had just continued eating and taking care of themselves and providing the right environment to not let these things manifest. But birth control can really change that. And for a lot of women, it turns these genes on. And so, things like hair loss and stuff like that can also be because of that. And any of the other side effects, even worse ones like gallbladder disease, stroke, blood clots, things like that, could be kind of turned on because of the pill.
Wow, that's amazing stuff. I'm still blown away that 60% of women take it just to prevent symptoms. Like for example, you said acne. Like that's I never even considered that. And so the birth control aspect of it might just be like icing on the cake, right? Or a side benefit. Like, oh, great, now I can just date freely or whatever. I don't know. Not have to worry about that.
Yeah, right. Hopefully not,
that's
but
interesting. Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess hopefully not in the mainstream. But I mean, with our culture now, it's getting pretty bad.
Yeah.
But that's why I got into health too, with the acne stuff. That's interesting that you had. I didn't have cystic acne, but I remember in high school, like every week I would have a pimple on my face or whatever that just made me want to not go to school or hide my face or not make eye contact, and it causes a lot of like long-term anxiety. I think it could cause like PTSD almost, just that like self-awareness, sure. Like something's wrong,
I've been there. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm still working on it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, I guess there's different ways of going about it. I think doing the self-confidence work at the same time you're doing the actual nutritional work and getting the fat soluble vitamins and carbs and animal protein, and kind of hit it from both angles, right?
Totally. But so many women are, they're just at a loss and so confused about what to do, because many of their doctors tell them this is totally normal. It's like all in your head. And doctors don't really know anything other than to prescribe things. So, they're not going to tell you to change your lifestyle, change what you eat. They're not going to tell you about iron overload. So, of course, growing up in a society of kind of like passive, being a passive part of your health, it makes sense for women to take birth control. But honestly, like the most freedom I've found is understanding my cycle. So many women don't still. And that's one of the most empowering things you can do is understand your cycle. Because we're only fertile 6 to 7 days out of the month. So if you know exactly when you're fertile, there's no need to take a pill for 100% of the time when you're only fertile for 25% of the time, and put yourself at such risk for other health issues. And obviously, if you're taking it for symptoms, you have something else to work on, so it's not solving the issue. It's going to come back when you're done with the pill, and it's probably going to have other ramifications that's caused other issues. So you're going to have to, two issues or three issues instead of that one issue that you have to deal with.
That's a really good point. Yeah, it's kind of like the medical system's way of doing things. It's like send a nuke for a little problem. Like you have SIBO, it's just slam antibiotics and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, it's not the right way to think.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about estrogen because I interviewed some women on the podcast, and we talked about a lot of these things from different angles. And I used to think that estrogen's a female hormone, and you'll read that Google search, estrogen, it's like the female hormone, but there's not a lot of talk about progesterone and its importance. And so I know it's not as simple as like, estrogen goes up, progesterone goes down, and then all the problems start, but it's a big part of it, right?
Yes. So the pill has, there's a couple types of pills. There's a combination pill, which has synthetic estrogen and synthetic progesterone. There's a synthetic progesterone only pill. Then you have your intrauterine devices, so the IUDs. These can be similar as well. A lot of them are progesterone only, or progestin, I should say. They're not real progesterone. And then you have your copper IUD. And you have your shots, which absolutely scared the crap out of me. And then you have your other contraceptive methods like condoms, spermicide, female condoms, etc. But the pill, usually the one that people are taking is a combination pill. The progestin only pill gets prescribed for women that actually can't tolerate the estrogen only, or sorry, the combination, the estrogen in the combination pills. But that pill, the progestin only, is actually, I think, 60% effective. So it's even less effective for some reason. But yeah, so when you take birth control, a combination pill, or even, progestin only, progestin is not ideal either. It causes so much oxidative stress, and it can really. Morley sent me a study on synthetic estrogen and progesterone recently on hormone replacement. I hope it's okay that I'm talking about this, Morley. But it basically showed that synthetic progesterone, so progestin, it basically cancels out any and all possible benefits that taking a synthetic estrogen might, which I just don't think either of them are good, but you're taking such a huge dose in the birth control pill that it completely shuts off the connection between your brain and your reproductive system. So they're not talking for however long you're on it, and suppressing again. That's a really suppressing that that connection is not a good thing. There's going to be repercussions to suppressing your natural biology that way for that long. So, a lot of women also end up with huge estrogen dominant symptoms on the pill and off the pill. Estrogen is basically one of the only hormones that can be made while you're on the pill naturally, because you are making it through your fat cells as well. So not just your ovaries, not just your adrenals. Your fat cells can take over some of the burden. But what's interesting is like sex hormone binding globulin, SBGH, goes way up when you're on the pill to try to protect you against too many hormones. So it binds to things like testosterone as well. So a lot of women on the pill are super, super low in testosterone, and they actually end up very low in testosterone when they come off the pill, because the way that it works is it could potentially have a long-term effect. So, messing with that system, it could end up that you have low testosterone for the rest of your life, and that's not good, because if you are trying to conceive, it low testosterone means you probably have very low libido. Um, and it's, by design, we're supposed to have testosterone because that's what makes us frisky around day 10 to day 14 of our cycle. We naturally become friskier because our testosterone is rising, um, you know, through design to allow us to become most um, frisky when we're about to ovulate. So it's by design. It's so that the sperm can penetrate the egg and things like that. Um, so yeah, the long story short, yeah, estrogen is not something you want to be taking supplementally like that.
That's interesting. And the form that's in birth control, is it estrone? Because there's estradiol, estrone. There's like 3 or 4 different types of estrogen, maybe even more, right? But,
There's estrone, there's estradiol, there's estriol. I think those are the three, but the one
mm,
in birth control is synthetic. So let me
mhm.
just double check. Estrol.
Yeah, I remember Georgie Dinkoff that I had on the show. He posted an interesting study of the estrogen that they measure is not the one you want to look at. Like one is worse than the other. I think it's estradiol is worse than estrone. I might have that flipped, but it's one.
I think you're right.
Mhm,
Well, I know that estrone is like the mother hormone, but
mhm,
doctors only check usually estradiol. So
mm,
they're only checking one form when there's actually three, and estrone has just as much capacity to create the other kinds. So estrone is really the kind of mothership.
wow.
Um, but the synthetic estrogens, they actually behave, even though you're taking synthetic estrogen, they can actually behave a lot like androgens. Molecularly speaking, they look very much like testosterone. So that's why a lot of women can actually get acne on the pill too. They can experience hair loss as well. They can get hirsutism, hair growth, where they don't want it to be. Um, and we know as well that from Georgie's work and I believe Denny Roddy, they've spoken a lot about recently. Um, I think Georgie actually has a study posted on his blog. It's the first one. Um, it's about estrogen being the cause of baldness, not testosterone or DHT, like many doctors like to blame. So, it's the influx of estrogen that's really creating so many issues.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, let's see. We have a pretty lengthy Q&A. I was thinking of just jumping in, and then we could always, if we have time, just go off on little topics. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, we had a lot of people asking questions. That's why I love having people like you on the show that understand truly that what's responsible for proper health in women, because it's such a confusing topic. And I work with clients where it's like, I crashed from keto. I'm gaining weight again. I'm gaining it all back. All the weight I lost on keto, I'm gaining it all back. And I'm just frustrated. I
Hmm.
don't know what to eat. That's like a lot of people's thing. So I like having shows like this and
Yeah.
talking with people like you that know their stuff, because then we could just practical things that people could implement and kind of, planting some seeds of things for them to look into.
Well, thanks. That's a huge compliment.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about your website too after this. So um, this is a funny one. What's the deal with coffee? What is the best kind to get? Kind of a loaded question.
Yeah. So I will disclaimer, I am not a coffee expert. But, you know, I always make sure it's organic. The pesticides can really suppress the iron blocking effects. Um, and I always make sure it's fresh to minimize any kind of mold that might be growing on it. But yeah, I always go for organic and fresh. And if I do decide to do decaf, I'll always go for a water process decaf because that's not processed with any chemicals. They usually process decaf with formaldehyde to extract the caffeine, and that's not fun. So yeah, coffee is great. I think it's a super metabolic food. It's a nutrient. A lot of the things that I have to work on with clients, though, is they're drinking it first thing in the morning. and that's what they drink first, before water, before food. And they're complaining to me, oh, I have a migraine like in the morning, or I'm just so tired. I don't understand why, or I can't go to sleep at night. It's just, the way that you start your morning really sets a tone for the day. So, making sure you eat within 30 minutes of waking and not having your coffee until about 15 minutes to 20 minutes after your meal is the best way to do it. Because when you wake up, you're already depleted. Your glycogen stores are low. You're dehydrated. You can feel it. And by just jump starting your metabolism with coffee, you're actually doing the opposite. You're going to slow down your metabolism. You're going to cause a lot of blood sugar imbalances that you're going to be trying to catch up, through during the day. And so it's just best after food. That's what I have to say.
I love all of that. Yeah, I was doing it so wrong when I was fasting for 23 hours a day, and I was drinking coffee without any sugar in it. Now I drink it with maple syrup after breakfast. And so, yeah, and I've seen like protein health coaches and keto coaches on Instagram, like people asking in a live Q&A, like, what do you eat today? And they're like, well, I'm having my coffee with collagen and no sugar, and that's all I've eaten. It's like, what? It's like, and you're coaching all these people. It's like, I guess they create clients for us. That's the benefit there.
Right. Oh gosh, yeah. But that's terrible, though. I mean, I also work at a CrossFit gym. And a couple of coaches, well, a couple of the members there, and even one coach they're into intermittent fasting, and they're drinking coffee all in the morning. They're not eating, and then they're wondering why they have to stop completely in the middle of their workout and just, hang their head over, kneel down, and just stop what they're doing because their body's just shutting down. And, I just don't believe fasting is a health practice.
Yeah, I've told people it's just like you're forcing your body into a backup system. Like it doesn't make sense. Like, and do we even know that it happened that ancestrally, there was these times of famine that were so common? I think that's an assumption that people make. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that gets into, whether I don't believe in evolution and like all these like creationism and, how the world was tropical, if the Great Flood happened, and that's a whole nother thing. But I think there's a lot of assumptions that are made about where we came from. So
yeah, there's just a lot we don't know. And the best we can do is support our bodies with the information we have right now.
Yeah, well said. And I just got a Ikawa roaster. I started to roast my own green coffee beans. So I'm really excited about that. So
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's
let me know how that goes.
Yeah, it's I have friends that I have a friend Leon that's opening a coffee shop in LA called Play, and so he hooked me up with all the best stuff. But yeah, coffee's fun. You can get lost in it. It's a whole hobby. So.
It is.
So this is actually a good segue from what we were talking about. Ways to get hormonal acne under control. Nutritional advice for balancing hormones. I guess that kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, for sure. So, there could be so many drivers of your hormonal acne. The couple things that I've pretty much narrowed it down to are, one, iron. There's definitely an iron component. Two, retinol deficiency. So, are you getting enough vitamin A, real vitamin A? Stress is a huge component because then it leads to the hormonal imbalance aspect. So hormonal acne is really just, it's a symptom. It's your body trying to flag and get your attention if something's wrong. And usually when it appears on the skin, that's like the number one way that your body tries to tell you something. You could see it physically on your face. And so it's a sign of a larger imbalance. And if there's no one pill or fix it all, you really have to assess what you're eating, how you're living, the chemicals that you're coming in contact with, how you're sleeping, what you're supplementing with. If you're taking prenatals or multivitamins with iron in it, you're feeding that bacteria that could potentially be causing that acne. If you're overexercising, hormonal balance is all about balance. And so if you're doing anything to an extreme, it's going to show in some way, shape, or form. It's going to knock something down. And cause kind of like a domino effect. Women have what's called the ovarian, adrenal, thyroid axis. And so if one is off, you can bet the other two are going to be off as well. So something happening, something that you're doing, eating, the way you're living is causing that imbalance. And so really taking a good step back and assessing things from that perspective is the way to go, because you really need to build a good foundation for not just getting rid of your acne, but for long-term health. And so when you're starting to really focus on your metabolism, acne just kind of disappears.
Yeah, that was awesome. And in my recent episode with Morley, we talked about acne a little bit, and he was saying whatever the liver can't clear is going to come through the skin. And
Yep.
that made so much sense to me, dealing with acne and eczema for much of my life and looking at what worked and what didn't. Stress was definitely a huge factor. But I was probably vitamin E deficient. I was fasting all the time, so I didn't have glycogen. I didn't have retinol, which the liver needs. I didn't have K2, right, especially K27. So all these factors you just plug in, and yeah, my skin's, it's definitely a work in progress. I mean, depending on how long you've had acne, right, it could take years to come back to balance.
Yes, it can. So it can be a slow roll, but it's worth sticking with the punches.
Yeah. Nutritional needs while nursing. I get a lot of questions from women like, should I take folic acid and all these supplements and folate and
oh gosh. I actually recently did a post on multivitamins and
cool.
or multivitamins and prenatals, and yeah, I don't go by the recommended prenatal prescription. You know, your nutritional needs while nursing, they're going to increase about 500 calories. It can really depend on the person, but it's about there. And so you're going to need more protein. You're going to need more saturated fats. You're basically a milk factory for a baby. You also have to be properly hydrated. So, you know, the liquid, the fluid is not just coming from nowhere. It's not appearing out of nowhere. It's coming from you. And so you have to make sure you're properly hydrated. So that means, you know, your levels of electrolytes have to be well balanced as well. You need the same nutrients that kept you fertile. So the B vitamins, and by the way, these nutrients that keep you fertile, all the ones that the birth control pill depletes, unfortunately. So, you know, you have to really up things and take things from a strategic standpoint when you're coming off. But to continue, you know, you have to get B vitamins like folate. The conversion between folic acid and folate, that MTHFR gene mutation, is really just a copper deficiency. So as long as you're getting copper, you should be able to convert properly. You need to be getting real vitamin A, so retinol, not this beta carotene that they like to put in the multivitamins. You know, you're not going to be loading up on carrots and things that are orange and leafy vegetables. You need retinol, so that's going to be from animal fats. And so, you know, you need to make sure you're getting lots of butter, ghee, tallow, and eating liver, which is an amazing source of retinol. Muscle meats as well have a lot of, you know, if you're eating a fatty piece of meat, that's going to have some retinol in it as well. Vitamin C, so whole food vitamin C, anything like that, oranges, papaya, pineapple in moderation because of its serotonin content. And yeah, and iodine as well as calcium. So you yourself need to be getting fish from the sea. Anything that's comes from the sea is going to have pretty much a good source of iodine. I don't believe in taking iodine too much. It's kind of like a last resort for me. But calcium, you want to make sure you're getting it from whole food sources as well. Dairy products, high quality dairy products, are going to knock, you know, some vitamin A off your checklist, and some calcium as well. So yeah, getting lots of that. Keep in mind though that Mother Nature does not include iron or vitamin D in breast milk. So if you're, you know, listening to a lot of external voices, you may want to research this and make some conclusions for yourself and your baby. Because a lot of formulas, a lot of foods are fortified with these, and these are not things that your baby needs to grow. This is something that your baby will be able to handle once their immune system is built, and that takes a couple of years. So I also personally wouldn't load up on DHA. I think that's a scam. And so, prioritizing saturated fats over those as well. And just making sure you're eating frequently, so you're getting a steady stream of nutrients is going to be super important because, again, you are a machine, and reducing stress is going to be super important as well. There's a lot of things that can happen in a day, and your milk supply can dry up because you've just experienced, a traumatic event, or even, you're just not eating well enough. So, you have to keep nourishing yourself and keeping that stress level down.
That was really awesome. And yeah, I remember Morley was saying like there's a 10% loss in minerals with the first child born, and then 9% for the second child, and 8%. And so
Yep.
that, like, the magnesium and copper are huge pieces there.
Yes,
And I want to
copper
ask you,
for sure.
does pineapple have serotonin? I wasn't aware of that. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it has a little. I don't know
Interesting.
exactly like the milligram level or anything like that, but it
Mhm.
has a little bit.
Dang. Yeah, I get this good like pineapple jerky that I take with me when I'm on the trail or whatever. From solely fruit, I think, but they make a mango too, so I'll have to see if mango. I don't think mango
Ooh,
has serotonin. Hopefully.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a good little trick. I'll bring like
I
that
love
and
mango.
jerky. Yeah, yeah. It's so good. Yeah, yeah. We don't have a lot of it up in here in Idaho, but
That makes sense. Well, hopefully you can get maybe some dry mango.
right. Yeah. Um, and iodine too. I wanted to hit on that. I used to I used to think, whenever I thought of thyroid, I'd say, "Oh, iodine's essential," and I used to share that on my YouTube and stuff. Unfortunately, just because I was kind of repeating, I think, and it just kind of made sense. But I
Hmm.
was doing the Lugol's iodine, then I think I switched to nascent iodine. But it's weird that supplement, that mineral, gets highlighted so much, and
Hmm.
it's kind of like people in the nutritional community highlighting the wrong things, like omega 3s and ascorbic acid and vitamin D and zinc, instead of like copper and magnesium and all the good stuff. Right.
Right. And well, it's like that look here, not there. So,
Hmm.
it's kind of a distracting way to it's meant to distract from the more important things.
Have you heard that iodine's good to take, like if there's nuclear fallout? Like supposedly, if you take a whole bottle, it'll protect your thyroid from. I think I actually heard that from Ray Peat. He would say it pretty much temporarily shuts down your thyroid gland if you take a huge bolus of iodine, so it'll protect you while it passes.
Right. I've heard that too. But that should say something, Taking too much iodine will shut down your thyroid. So, and it's a very fine balance. It depends on the person. So, and that's something that I usually explore at one of the last things I explore. Because it's just, it
Yeah.
can, go in the wrong direction. It can push you in the wrong direction.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it is a part of thyroid hormone with tyrosine, but it's not like usually we get
Hmm.
enough, especially if we're eating seafood. Um, that's
Yeah.
digestion and bowel issues is a big one. It's very broad.
Oh, yes, very broad. Um, that's a, I mean, it's something that probably a lot of people struggle with. You know, First question is, what are you eating? Because if you're eating a lot of irritating foods like nuts and seeds and cruciferous vegetables and a lot of grains that aren't prepared properly, a lot of legumes, of course, you're going to have digestion and bowel issues. Um, then we have stress. So how are you living your life? What is your eating routine? What's your mealtime routine? Are you sitting down or are you eating in the car, at your desk, things like that? Are you in that rest and digest state before you start to eat? Because if not, you're not going to be making the digestive enzymes that you need to break down the food. You're not going to be making enough hydrochloric acid that you need to digest your food. So, of course, you're going to end up bloated. You might end up with heartburn and worse, gallbladder pain potentially. over and over again, if you continue to do this and live that way and eat that way, it can create some issues. You know, what you eat can cause hypothyroidism, and hypothyroidism can cause issues with what you eat. So getting your metabolism up, making sure you're eating digestible fibers, not indigestible fibers, not too much fiber, um, enough protein to digest, detoxify and digest well, because you need things like B12 and zinc to create stomach acid as well as vitamin C. Zinc is bound to phytic acid, so if you're relying on plant foods to get your zinc, you're not getting any. And so, you really have to take a look because it could be a multitude of factors. But yeah, that's kind of where I would look first is what you're eating and making sure you're reducing stress. And then if those things don't seem to be working, it could be something underlying that. If you're struggling with digestion on birth control, as well as after birth control. It could be the estrogen that was in the birth control. Estrogen really, it just, having to digest estrogen, that much estrogen every single day, it takes a huge toll on your body. It's stressful, it raises the immune system, it puts you in a fight or flight state. So, you're going to have to figure out ways to detoxify that estrogen so that you can come out of it. The birth control also contains iron. So there's a pill called Loestrin. There's a couple for sure. There's actually many birth control pills, but this one I just happen to know about really well. The placebo pills in the fourth week of the month, they contain 75 milligrams of iron each. That is huge. That is so much iron. And so having to digest that of course you're going to have digestive issues. You have lots of oxidative stress. It's feeding bacteria. So, if you are already in a hypometabolic state, that pill is feeding bacteria more and more, and it's in a ferrous state. So, as we know, the ferrous form of iron is the dangerous form of iron. You want to convert it into ferric iron, but if there's not enough ceruloplasmin ferroxidase to make that conversion into ferric iron, you're going to have a lot of problems. And that's too much to digest anyway. We only need 1 milligram of iron every day if our recycling system is working correctly. So there's that to consider too. The iron in the pill and the estrogen in the pill may have caused some long-term damage. It causes scarring of the lining of your gut, and we are already in a hypometabolic state on the pill. Coming off of it, you need to do some healing. So that in itself, you may have very slow-moving motility, if at all, and so things are festering in places they shouldn't be, and that will also create bloating and gas and digestive upset. So a couple things to consider.
That was awesome. Yeah, I always like the iron recycling program. The crazy word for it is reticuloendothelial system.
Yeah, the
The
RES.
mononuclear. Yeah, it's easier for people to hear iron recycling program.
Yeah, much easier. Much easier to spell too.
Right? That's wild. 75 milligrams each pill. And you probably see me talk a lot about lipofuscin, which is kind of hard to research because there's not a lot on it. Like you really have to dig to find studies on it. But lipofuscin is basically omega-3s, estrogen, and iron largely. And there can be aluminum components and other things, but largely those three. And so you're giving 2 out of 3. And then if that person's supplementing fish oil or something, or algae oil, then it's just they're creating oxygen sinks all throughout their body at the same time.
It's true, and that's why a lot of women end up with melasma on their face. So it's these dark gray patches on their face, and just autoimmune issues as well. The skin autoimmune issues. I had one as well on the birth control pill. It was called lichen planus. I wouldn't recommend Googling it, but it's something that I experienced on the pill as well, due to all the estrogen, all of the iron, and just all the havoc it was causing with my immune system. So yeah.
It's called lycoplanus.
Lichen planus, Lichen.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Planus.
Wow, yeah, that looks wild. That's like extreme rashes, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much.
Yep.
Wow.
Not fun.
Yeah, I grew up seeing when I was working at a juvenile detention facility. I saw young girls there with vitiligo, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean that seems like a new condition. I don't know how long that's been around, but a lot of these chronic conditions haven't been around for a very long time.
Yeah, we saw a spike in all of them around the 50s when the birth control pill was introduced, when we started adding PUFA to our diet and swapping that for vitamin-rich saturated fat. A lot happened in the 50s that we just made a lot of mistakes on that we're seeing now.
Yeah. So let's see. Best diet tips for estrogen dominance. I guess you just kind of covered that basically with the digestion. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? Basically, animal foods is kind of a simple way to say it. But
Yeah, for sure. Animal foods, you want to make sure you're supporting your detoxification systems. Um, So eating frequently, your liver is going to help you with that. And so making sure your liver has enough energy, glycogen, to help you detoxify the estrogen. Making sure you're eating at a frequency that makes sense for you, making sure you're getting enough bioavailable protein. So think broths with glycine and proline and taurine, enough carbohydrates. This could be fructose, this could be glucose, it could be sucrose, whatever works for you. If it's roots and fruits, or a little bit of grains or mostly fruits. You have to play around with it and see what works. Limit alcohol. Alcohol is very estrogenic. Your estrogen levels are elevated, I think, for 24 hours after you have one drink. So if you have more than one, how long could that be? Um, it's not helping anyone's estrogen detoxification. And that's why you see a lot of men with sort of gynecomastia that drink heavily. Um, you want natural food sources like vitamin C. You want to, if you're at a reproductive age, you want to try and support your progesterone production because progesterone is what counteracts estrogen. So making sure that you're not stressing out too much, making sure that you're not overexercising, um, making sure that you're treating yourself with respect, nourishing your body, and eating the right foods. Like I mentioned before, mostly animal foods, carbohydrates, and things like that. Um, Raw carrots, bamboo shoots, orange juice, well-cooked mushrooms, they can all oppose estrogen, as well as vitamin E. So vitamin E is pretty amazing for antagonizing and opposing estrogen, getting some of that because it is depleted on the birth control pill as well. Um, so yeah, those are the things that I would be looking at, as well as the supplements you're taking. So, if you are taking any kind of like, I'm not a huge fan of like um, um, aromatase inhibitors like DIM, for example. I think they can really push us in the wrong direction. I've experienced, being pushed in the wrong direction with DIM. It just did not work out for me. And I would also, so I would be focusing on natural aromatase inhibitors like orange juice and vitamin E, and getting rid of xenoestrogens. So the plastics that you're drinking from, the cookware that you're cooking with, these also contain things like fluoride, and they're just not beneficial to your overall health and recovery.
that was awesome. Have you looked into nettle root extract? Because I used to harvest that in the mountains and tincture it. There's a ton up here actually on the house on the property here. I plan to do it, but that's a natural aromatase inhibitor, but it's not like dim. It's not it's like a root. So that's a fun one
Yeah,
I like to take.
I actually used to drink a lot of nettle root tea when I had asthma. Um, I After I came off the pill, I did some digging, and came up with my own protocol, followed it. This was before I even got any schooling, and I actually ended up curing my own asthma, which I'd been taking a steroid inhaler for about 28 years. And so it was changing my diet and lifestyle that actually got me off of um, my inhaler, which was great. But I did drink a lot of nettle root tea in the process, and it helped a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been interviewing. I just had Dr. Cass on for the third time really fun, entertaining character, really smart, and it seems like any kind of respiratory condition is pretty complex. It's like there's not really one thing, like one herb, like people think that's gonna, heal
Hmm.
your respiratory system. There's probably calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis, but he got me on the wild P73 oregano and the spruce resin for the respiratory, and I've been hitting those a little harder. And just growing up in the city, 30 years, I think we all have some respiratory healing to do. So I've been feeling like I
Yeah,
could breathe a little better and actually get more oxygen in that way. So yeah, there's a lot
that's
of
great.
things,
I'll have
but
to try
that
that.
was awesome. Yeah, spruce
Thanks.
resin's wild. It kind of burns, but it's fun to take, and it's a very unique taste. There's nothing like it. Um, but yeah, I appreciate you bringing up vitamin E too. I think that's one of the best things. I just got another book by Wilfred Shute, the
Oh,
vitamin E
awesome.
book, and I always point people to A Key to a Healthy Heart, and
Hmm.
he literally puts
I
the suppressed record of this curative value of this vitamin. So like, it's suppressed. Like
I
that's
have
like
that book. I'm gonna read it.
it's pretty. Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. It's really
Yeah,
sad. It was
I
like
just have to dive
when
in.
they came out on stage and was like, "What?" Yeah, yeah. It's pretty short. It's like a couple hundred pages, but yeah, it goes into the history of when they were like saying vitamin E pretty much takes care of heart disease, or it reverses it, or it fully prevents it. And they were like, "Oh, you quack, get off the stage." And they're ridiculed by the FDA. So it's so wild, the history of nutrition and supplements, how like we're pushed this one way, and like you said, don't look over here.
Yeah, look over there. Yep, that's happening a lot now. So who knows where we'll be 50 years from now if we've found the right things, if it's been demystified, if our attention has been able to clear. But we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like there's a lot of people resistant. Like I'm sure you get the trolls like, "What are you talking about? Where's your MD or whatever?" And like you don't know what you're talking about. You're just on
Hmm.
Instagram, and when you're saying omega threes are bad and stuff, it's kind of funny. Um, we're definitely going against the mainstream grain of what's especially with this coronavirus thing, right? It's like all the recommendations are things that deplete copper.
Yeah, it's it's interesting, but you know, people are scared of what they're not familiar with, so
Mhm.
it's just letting them come around on their time is what I found that is most helpful.
Yeah, I had to crash multiple times before I started to listen. Like I was taking like 30 grams of my own omega-3 supplement daily for a long time, and
That's a
I
lot.
had to pretty much have full adrenal burnout. Yeah, and I was like, wow, this is not good.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've
Yeah,
done it myself. That's what really, I don't know. That's probably why we find ourselves doing what we do as well, is because we've experienced the worst of it, and we want to help keep people from having to do that themselves.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I got into it because of longevity, and I thought that Walter Longo and uh, was it all the fasting experts, all those big names, uh, talking about intermittent fasting and autophagy and cellular recycling and the lysosomes. And then I was like, wait a second. I found out that lipofuscin cakes onto the lysosomes, and you can't do autophagy. And that's when like the wheels really started to turn. I was like, wow, the last 10 years I've actually been aging myself faster with how I've been living.
It's
So
scary
now
when
I'm
you
like
find
actually on
that
the right
stuff out.
track.
Yeah,
Right.
I've been there. I've taken fish oil and I totally regret it. I've taken prenatals. I totally regret it. But, you know, there's nothing you can do, so move on and move forward.
Yeah, hopefully we could shortcut people so they don't have to fall in those pitfalls, those traps, right? And just
Yeah,
sidestep it.
exactly.
And this is actually a good segue. Is there ever a good time to fast or cleanse for a period of time for certain healing protocols?
Oh, what an interesting question. That's a decision you're going to have to make for yourself. But just think about this. Once your liver runs out of glycogen, you can't detoxify. Uh, Once your metabolism slows down, you can't detoxify. So, how much are you healing while you're fasting? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. I guess people think that the mechanisms are all functioning properly, and there's like phase one, phase two liver detox pathways, and they think just by taking maybe this $1,000 like liposomal kit that they're gonna
Hmm.
get those detox pathways working. It's like, and meanwhile they're full of PUFA, they're full of iron, they have tons of lipofuscin, they're magnesium deficient. It's like people aren't looking at the foundation. They're spending like thousands on these detoxification cleanses and kits and liposomal formulas, and like they're not. You could spend a lot less actually taking care of. I mean, just donating blood, right? You can do something for free
Hmm.
that will help you a lot more than those supplements.
Yes, it's an excellent way to detoxify. You do have to do some preparation, but it's a great way to get your iron recycling system working, for sure. And I think there was one doctor that Morley mentioned recently that his his go-to prescription for people that were feeling ill was go donate blood immediately. That was the one thing he said to do. Um, so there is a lot of power in getting some of your blood and iron recycling system working. But yeah, I mean, you again, you have to look at the foundations. If they're not there, if you're not able to detoxify well, then what are you taking all these supplements for? They're not going to work, and that usually those detox kits have like glutathione and things like that, and B vitamins, and B vitamins are made from sewage sludge and coal tar, and glutathione doesn't survive your stomach acid. So it's just, to me, it's kind of a waste of money. So working on the foundations, like you said, is definitely where I would go first.
I love it. When I was in college, I did a paper on natural remedies, and I highlighted bloodletting in my paper. And there's actually websites if you just search leeches for sale. And I made a joke about this on Instagram, but I was pretty serious last year. I was like, if you want to detox, you can buy a large leech for $13. Keep it in a jar, slap it on your arm. I mean, I'm not recommending it, but that would be a lot cheaper than a lot of these supplements people are buying.
Yeah. And donating blood is free. So
Right. Save $13. There you go. You don't have to
yes.
put a worm-looking thing in your arm, but but yeah, I know certain doctors are doing self phlebotomy. I don't know. I'd rather someone else use the needle. Like, I guess intramuscular is one thing, but intravenous freaks me out more for some reason. So.
That's fair, I think. I wouldn't be brave enough to do it myself either.
Yeah. Can you consume too much raw goat milk or raw dairy products? Can you overdo it?
I don't know, can you? How do you feel? What's your body saying? If you're thriving, no, I don't think so. Your body, if your concern is like vitamin A toxicity, that's very rare, and it's usually only happens when you're consuming synthetic vitamin A. So, if your gut is happy, if you're happy, if you're feeling really good, then I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's a topic of debate with in the metabolism community of liquids, and I've said it I think many times on the show just because I'm fascinated with this whole thing, and I used to pretty much be a liquidarian, but I was doing it wrong because I was doing it sugar free. But I would literally have
Hmm.
liquids like all day and then eat dinner or something. But um, using liquids as a meal, milk is an interesting food because it has all your macronutrients, but it also has all the electrolytes, right?
Hmm.
Has mostly calcium, but there's potassium, sodium, and magnesium in there too. Raw
Hmm.
milk, good quality raw milk. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just finding what works for you, right? You kind of have to experiment.
Exactly, and that's why taking your temperature after you're eating these things, after snacks or meals, and your pulse as well will help you figure out if it is working for you. But also, you need to think about the qualitative stuff like how you feel, how's your skin, how's your mood, how's your energy, because that's really even almost more important than um, any numerical data that you're going to get. I personally don't do well with just liquids. I've worked with Josh Rubin before, and I consider him a mentor, and we found out that I don't do well with liquids. So, you know, It's I need real food, I need solid food.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. How to fix blocked fallopian tubes with no known cause. Surgery didn't work.
That sucks. I'm sorry. It sounds like, any kind of growth. It sounds like this might be a growth thing, blocking your tubes. So any kind of growth is usually driven by estrogen, and you'll probably want to get your estrogen under control. Make sure you're making enough progesterone to counterbalance estrogen. All the tips I've talked about before, so reducing stress, nourishing your body, removing toxins, also thinking about iron as well, trying to get that under control, optimizing your iron recycling system. Iron and estrogen have a very intimate relationship. Um, they Women are actually a lot better at absorbing iron than men are. We're also better at detoxifying it because we have a period. But I think, in Dr. Ray Peat's book called PMS to Menopause, he talks about how women can actually absorb 3 to 4 times more iron from a meal than men can. And that's a lot of iron. So we really need to be ovulating, having our period to counterbalance that. We need to get our iron recycling system underway. So copper, uh, beef liver, whole food vitamin C, things like that, to not only help you improve your iron recycling system, but to also support your progesterone production as well. Vitamin C is amazing for that. So yeah, I would. It's probably a little more complicated than that, but that's where I would look first is getting your estrogen under control.
That was awesome. Yeah, and if nothing else works, I'd say look into my CLF protocol, like calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis, because those could also be a factor in blocking. Little plug there, but that's
Yeah,
usually kind of the end accumulations, but definitely helps. I mean, just the systemic enzymes I've heard some crazy stuff of just dissolving the scar tissue because that scar tissue can inhibit flow as well.
mm-hmm. It's very true.
Um, is it true that you should avoid sugar with a UTI? How to cure UTIs or heal? That's a better word.
Those really are not fun either. Um, UTIs, so UTIs can be usually caused by almost like a pelvic floor issue. It's you go to urinate, but not all of it comes out, or some of it's like gets stuck and goes back in, and so it's left there to fester with bacteria and things like that. Um, so you may need to see a women's physical therapist uh, to really get your pelvic floor working correctly. Um, some really easy tips: make sure you pee after sex. That's you know number one. I would not remove carbohydrates from your diet necessarily. I think that's a myth. Um, make sure you're um, feeding yourself properly, frequency wise, nutrient wise. You may want to try a carrot and coconut oil salad um, with a little bit of vinegar to really get some bacteria get out of your system because our gut and our everything's kind of like in the same area down there. And so, the health of one can sometimes impact the health of the other. Often, if we've got issues, we may be getting yeast infections and things like that vaginally. So, you know, and the bladder is right next door. So, I would make sure you're not only cleaning yourself properly internally, digestively, but also vaginally and bladder wise. Um, if you're taking iron supplements, you're feeding the bacteria, so reassessing your supplements as well. I always go back to this, but you really have to make sure you're not feeding the problem. So synthetic vitamin A, iron, um, quercetin is an iron chelator, so potentially using that. D-mannose or real cranberry juice have components that have really been shown to help UTIs. Um, so yeah, that's what I would look at.
That's awesome. Have you heard of like vaginal steaming too with essential oils? Because that might help as well, right? For UTIs.
I've never tried that. Um, I, I don't know too much about it. I usually the stuff that I'm well versed on, I've tried myself, but I will look into that.
Yeah, I've been getting back into essential oils, just looking into oregano, but it seems like each one, ultimately, you'd want to make them yourself. That'd be pretty cool. The
Hmm.
woman that owned this property before was an herbalist, so she planted all these different herbs here. So we plan on making different essential oils just for our own use. It'd be fun.
That's very cool.
Yeah. um, Most important minerals for rebalancing hormones from hypothyroidism.
Good question. So it's important to think about why you have hypothyroidism in the first place. So replenishing these minerals is not going to solve your hypothyroidism. Um, you need to look at how you're living. And yes, you might need some supplementation. You know, obviously, you're having trouble making energy, you're having trouble with fatigue. The RCP can be a great way to get your thyroid up and running again. You do need copper to create a thyroid TRH. So, what does it stand for? Thyroid regulating hormone, which tells the pituitary to make TSH. So if that's not working well, your thyroid function is going to be off. Um, Hypothyroidism is also a clear retinol deficiency. So you need vitamin A, retinol to have the thyroid function properly, thyroid hormones function properly. Um, you also will probably want to look at, your lifestyle, food frequency, what you're eating. Is it working for you? Is it not? Just because you're eating a metabolic diet doesn't mean that it's working for you and your metabolism. Like I mentioned before, liquids versus real food. If you're having mostly liquids during the day, is it really working for you? Maybe not. So looking at that as well, and then assessing the stressors outside of that area as well. So in your life, how are your relationships? How is your exercise? This is huge as well. I can't tell you how many people I work with that have hypothyroidism because of overexercising. Um, they just go too hard, too fast, don't give themselves enough rest. I've been guilty of this myself. So, it's really taking a step back and assessing that too. You need to address the foundations. Otherwise, you can take minerals all you want, but your hypothyroidism will come back.
That's an awesome point. Yeah, and I like to tell people that too. Like you have to look at the burn rate because magnesium and copper are awesome, and they'll probably retinol, well, vitamin, but just as far as minerals go, copper and magnesium will probably solve most of your symptoms, but it'll come back if you don't take care of the underlying issue, right? Of iron
Hmm.
overload or whatever it is. And I like that you brought up overexercising too, because it's such an interesting part of human psychology. I never really got into that. I've always just free climbed out in nature and just done hikes and just natural movements outdoors. But um, I notice people will get hooked on the gym, and to me, it almost looks like that's their stress outlet, but they're not
Hmm.
getting rid of the cause of the stress, which might be their relationship or where they
Right.
live or their job, right?
Totally. It's a coping mechanism. And I talk about this a lot with my clients um, because more is not better, better is better. And so you really need to stop using the gym as like a way to cope. It can be beneficial and for your health in the right doses, but if you're not addressing the other stressors in your life, the gym will become another stressor. And so, while you think it's maybe it's benefiting your mental health in a way, but it's going to take its toll. Your metabolism will take a hit long term, and you'll have to start from scratch and really you're going to have to assess these things at some point because you're going to break down at some point. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So trying to manage them uh, and not just cope, face them is a better approach.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I've seen like 24-hour fitness gyms or other ones inside a mall, and I just think of all the artificial blue wavelength light in excess and all of the Wi-Fi signals stacked. Maybe you have 20 Wi-Fi signals and you're getting slammed you're wearing a short sleeve shirt and you have blue light hitting your retina and hitting your skin. It's like that's
Hmm.
just a recipe for inflammation, and then you're doing this stressful
Yeah.
exercise. So
And
just
maybe not
stacks.
eating right. And,
Right.
it's a lot of factors that just add up.
Hmm. What type of birth control is most dangerous for women?
Oh, that's a good question. Each type of birth control has its cons. So, you know, the hormonal ones with the synthetic hormones are the worst in my opinion. Um, like I mentioned, birth control can be a trigger for other genetic issues. So, y you know, if you're nourishing yourself afterwards, fine, but um, it can cause a lot of problems. So the I would say FAM is the least dangerous. So fertility awareness method, it's got a 95 to 99% success rate if used correctly, and that's just tracking your cycle, learning about your body. It's super empowering to understand your cycle. You have way more knowledge this way. You are super in tune. You know exactly what's going on. Your period, your menstrual cycle is basically a report card for um, how you're living. So it's a report card of your health. And so when we take the birth control pill, we completely lose the ability to see into that. It's our menstrual cycle is a blessing because we know exactly how our health is doing. But when we can take the birth control, it completely flatlines it. It disconnects us from, it disconnects the connection from our brain to our ovaries and reproductive system. So we have no idea what's going on. And that's why symptoms can often fester much easier. But yeah, I mean, each kind of birth control is going to have its own cons, whether that's in preventing pregnancy or danger to the person taking the birth control. So you have to really highly consider, do you want to be at higher risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disease and cancer, within just 6 months of taking a pill? Or do you want to learn about your body and be able to support your body in a way that will let you live a long, happy, healthy life? So these are decisions that you have to make. It's also one that you have to make with your partner. So it's not just about you, it's about your partner, and balancing and assessing those pros and cons are really important.
That was awesome. Yeah, I had my friend Megan on the show, and she recommended the app Natural Cycles. And I'm sure there's a ton of different apps, but I think that's a big one that women can use to track their.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. I use
Mhm.
Flow, but there's also another one. Oh, I can't think of it right now, but there's really a bunch, and there are so many apps and platforms and devices available to make it easier. So, I understand if someone is having trouble with their cycle in general, maybe it's inconsistent, maybe it's irregular, but again, that's a sign that there's something wrong. So the birth control pill isn't going to fix it, which is often what it's prescribed as doing. Um, you know, Back in the 50s or 60s, it was created to help regulate women's cycles under the guise of, a contraceptive. And so that's how women got away with, or doctors got away with prescribing it to women, is it would help regulate their cycles when it was really just shutting it down completely. So um, I can't tell you how many women have gone on birth control thinking it was helping them regulate their hormones, and then them coming off and not having any idea that the connection between their brain and their reproductive system had been shut off the entire time, and they're wondering why they're infertile and they can't get their period back, and they want to conceive so badly. So it's sucky, but you really have to consider, if you want to have a child in the future, infertility is one of the side effects of birth control. Just think about that.
Yeah, that's well said. I have a question for you. What do you think about Progest E, like the wild yam, natural progesterone, and the pregnenolone supplementation? I know people have different perspectives on this. Like Danny Roddy and Georgie Dinkoff are kind of in the same mentality that since they're at the top of the chain for making all the other hormones, they're completely safe. Um, I guess my current perspective on it is that they can be helpful when someone's recovering, but they shouldn't be relied upon for health. Like they could just be like a little boost. Um, but I'm just curious your thoughts if you've used those with clients or seen benefits at all.
I don't use those with clients. The progesterone, I've thought about it, but
Mhm.
honestly, once you fix the metabolism, it usually all the problems go away. So, applying progesterone and incorporating it into your healthcare routine when your body isn't ready for it. So it can be incredibly metabolic, and it's kind of like coffee. Like if you add it without enough support, it's going to wreck you. And so you really have to focus on getting your minerals balanced first. Then your vitamins, and then your vitamins, and then larger things. It's really far up the chain for me, and usually by the time we've fixed people's minerals and their metabolism, and assessed their lifestyle and things like that, made a couple changes there. They don't need progesterone cream or Progest E, um,
Mhm.
or other forms of a natural progesterone. Um, I can't say that I would never, but for me and my client base, it has been unnecessary.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I've read reviews on like the creams and stuff, and it seems to have like brought back people's lives and ability to live their lives. But it seems like a band-aid thing the way that they're using it. Like if they fix all the
Hmm.
underlying, but it's the real work. I guess they don't want to do. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for someone to help you like shed 15 pounds 1 week before your wedding, I'm not that person. I'm gonna help you start from the foundations and really build long-term health. So yeah, I mean, I'll let you know if I do try it. Have you tried it yourself?
I have, yeah. I think when we learn about repeat and all this information, people go gung ho, and then some people never get out of it. I've seen that on Instagram where it's just like whatever repeat says, they're just fanatical and they just do it every day, and it's like not not really experimenting truly and listening to their body. But um,
Hmm.
yeah, I tried Progest E. I tried I forget Ona's Naturals progesterone oil with vitamin E. Um, I just love the way Progesti tastes. It's kind of like candy to me. I might be weird in
Ooh.
that respect, but um, yeah, I have experimented with like 100 milligrams to 200 a day of pregnenolone, and I think I saw some benefit. It was right before I moved from California to Idaho, and so my stress load was huge. I was, packed up like 100 boxes,
Hmm.
and so it was just a lot of stuff going on. And I feel like it did give me that extra boost, but I did feel like definitely my caloric needs and nutritional needs were higher, and so I had to be just very careful to eat frequently because I felt like if I didn't, I would have the rug pulled out from under me. So I had to build that foundation at the same time and have that going. But um, yeah, I like your approach. It's balanced and that makes sense. I think in context, a lot of these things can be beneficial, but people tend to
Hmm.
jump on them first. So.
Yeah, gotta fix. If we do that, then we're just approaching it the way conventional medicine would. So,
Mhm.
it's really you gotta look at the foundations first, and then if if it does work for you, it's icing on the cake. But you have to build the cake first.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like taking thyroid hormone. I haven't done it, partly because it's hard to get, but not near Tijuana anymore. No, but I take like ancestral supplements, thyroid, and I know it has T1 through 4 in it, and so it's not just a pure, it's not like Cytomel or something. But I
Hmm.
do feel good on that. But that's another thing where it's like nitrous. Like even if you're taking desiccated thyroid, you better have carbs and protein coming in consistently.
Yep. Yep.
um, this is a good segue because you mentioned weight loss before wedding. Had a couple questions on cellulite, and people are obsessed with weight loss. I'm sure you get that with clients. Like, I feel better, my mood's better, but I'm gaining weight. This sucks. It's like everyone's obsessed with body fat. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on cellulite,
I
reducing
mean,
it, and the cause and all that?
yeah, I think, it stems from a low metabolism, you're in a hypometabolic state. Um, there could be some electrolyte imbalance. So if we're holding on to water because we don't have enough sodium naturally coming in, uh, maybe that could be it, or other imbalances in electrolytes. I also think it has a lot to do with estrogen and polyunsaturated fats. They are both very hydrophilic, so you know they're not going to function or be structured as properly as a saturated fat, and so PUFAs are also the ones that are most likely to be stored. So it just makes sense to me that we would have, we'd be storing, or the cellulite is caused by stored PUFA. Maybe you have some estrogen in there too. Our fat cells do produce estrogen. So, I think those are the causes potentially. Um, what I've seen get rid of cellulite is boosting the metabolism, focusing on the foundations we've been talking about this whole time. So the right foods, the right kind of movement, um, uh, lifting weights is excellent for reducing body fat in the right way, in the right doses, of course. Moderate weights and strength training is excellent because it increases our body's needs, or our muscles actually like to utilize free fatty acids and eat those up. So, if we are doing that, losing fat in that way, that can help. So strength training, adding some of that, building muscle that will eventually eat up all those fats. As well as, you have to sleep. Sleep is where we rebuild and burn fat as well. That's one of the main fat burning time periods in our day. So making sure you're sleeping well. Our metabolism is compromised when we don't sleep well. We our carbohydrate metabolism is compromised by 40%. So we're going to have a lot of fatty acids, free fatty acids, floating around, and we're going to be accumulating those. You could potentially, this is where I've thought about using Progest E, is applying Progest E on cellulite sites. So I've read a lot about that, and I'm interested to try it. There is a level of cellulite that all women are going to have as well, so you have to be realistic. And what else? You could do dry brushing to stimulate circulation there, as well as scrubs. So they make all kinds of scrubs. Coffee scrub would be great to try, maybe with some coconut oil, to just increase the circulation there, so that when you do go strength train, they're utilized a lot easier. But those are my thoughts on cellulite. It's a tough topic because a lot of women are self-conscious about it, and I totally get it. I myself have some. But you also have to be realistic. It's part of being a woman too, I think. Just make sure you're nourishing yourself and doing everything to support your metabolism, and all things will fall into place.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think dry saunas can be hugely beneficial too, because like there could be heavy metals and just different plastics stuck in the adipose tissue, and just to open up the pores. I've gotten a lot of benefits from dry sauna, like far infrared sauna therapy.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Although that can be a stress
You have to
too, right?
assess too. Yes, I was just going to say that if the person is in a really compromised state, then it might not help as much as we want it to. So focusing again on the foundations, and then you can add that in as like a cherry on top.
I love it. Let's see. How to structure a metabolically supportive meal.
Oh, wow. Well, in general, I always recommend some kind of carbohydrate and protein together, never apart, and at every meal. So the level of fat will depend on the person too, but I'm usually looking for protein and carb together. Um, and like I mentioned, it's really individual, the kind of protein that works for you. So liquids versus um, and carbohydrates. Does juice work for you? I don't know. But you always want to play around with the kind of foods that are going to work for you. So dairy is a great source of protein. I love bone broth, eggs, muscle meat, organ meats, So play around with those. And carbohydrates, you can have fruit, you can have starch, you can have fruit and starch together. Just playing around with what works for you and seeing um, how you feel, because everyone is different in that regard. So what's metabolically supportive for one person is not going to be metabolically supportive for you necessarily.
Awesome point. Um, how long should someone wait to try to conceive after coming off of birth control?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, it's also probably very controversial. So if you know, if you're working with a conventional doctor, I mean, I've had plenty of friends that want to conceive, and their doctor said, you know, just go off the pill, you'll be able to conceive right away. Just, yeah, that's all you have to worry about. And they talk to me, and I'm like, what? Did they really say that? Because when you come off the pill, you are so depleted in so many nutrients. You're depleted in B vitamins, you're depleted in vitamin E, you're depleted in vitamin C, zinc, selenium, copper. You're so depleted in copper. And so you need to get all of those stores back, not just to help you function as a person and a human being, but to help you create another person and human being. You're going to be creating a child. And so if you don't have those mineral stores, those nutrient stores, that availability, there's a lot higher risk for things that go wrong, um, things that can go wrong, excuse me. And so, you really have to spend a couple months, maybe a couple years rebuilding those nutrient stores. Um, I personally would take, if I was coming off of the pill and had no issues, uh, after, um, I would still spend a year and a half building my minerals and vitamins and getting my body in shape for uh, conception. Um, that said, if you do have issues, so we talked about 40% of women have cycle issues. They may have other symptoms. They may have hypothyroidism now. They may have PCOS. They may have an autoimmune condition after coming off of the birth control pill. You have to get this in check, because we basically imprint on our children. So the state of our health when we are conceiving is basically passed on to our child. And so we want to be in good shape. We don't want to be in a compromised health state, because it's more likely that our child will experience the same issues that we are experiencing. So those are two reasons to really do some work and wait and replenish. And you might have to figure out how you're going to um, do contraception uh, during that time. So why not start now? Because you're gonna have to figure it out anyway.
Awesome points. This is a good last question, and I get this question a lot. I think it's a growing issue. Female hair loss, excessive female hair loss, and my friend said low iron. I guess they got tested low iron. I guess meaning low ferritin, which doesn't say much, but fatty liver and low vitamin D. There's a connection between hypothyroidism and hair loss and thinning hair, right? Hair in general.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, we need a lot of energy to upkeep our hair. Our hair is like really non-essential to our bodies. It doesn't consider it to be an essential thing. So if we have low energy, if we're not able to create enough energy, of course our body's not going to focus its energy, the little reserves it has, on upkeeping our hair. It's completely, non-essential. So um, until we get our metabolism up, until we get our energy production up, our hair probably will suffer. It's going to be one of the last things to come back um, on our healing journey, just like it will be skin. Skin is one of the last things to come back as well, usually. Um, so, from what you said, low iron, fatty liver, hair loss, low vitamin D, that all sounds like iron overload to me, honestly. Um, you know, Vitamin D goes down when we are dealing with inflammation, and that's storage vitamin D. So our body's trying to activate it and use it up. That's probably why it's low. Or maybe we just have, not enough saturated fat that we're getting, or retinol to synthesize it, or magnesium to synthesize it, excuse me. And we need vitamin A to activated. So making sure you have those, as well as low iron, so definitely copper deficient, absolutely 100%. And if you are taking the pill and you're low iron, you probably are getting iron anyway. So just think about why you might still be anemic in that sense. It's not adding up, and it's for a reason. Um, so you really want to probably start eating liver, getting whole food vitamin C to get your copper stores up. Um, if you are still taking the birth control pill, you probably want to reassess that, have a real talk with yourself and your partner, and figure that out. Um, Fatty liver, again, it's usually probably iron toxicity. Um, Iron will accumulate in the liver. It will cause, it will meld with things and oxidize things. Iron is completely very, very reactive, and so you want to get it out as much as possible. So start donating blood if you can. You'll need to get your copper stores up to get your recycling system, iron recycling up, to be able to do that if you're anemic, which it sounds like you are. Um, so yeah, and then getting your metabolism up, it's going to probably take a couple months, but over time, your hair will come back once your body feels safe enough to spend energy on it.
That was awesome. Well, I think you gave so many tips, and people's minds, if this is the first time hearing all this, it's probably spinning. To us, it's normal. We've been kind of immersed in it for for so long, but I still learned a lot from you, and I think what you share is awesome. And just thanks for the work that you're doing. I think you're changing lives and helping women recover from this madness that was pushed.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm really passionate about what I do. I've really experienced the worst of birth control, the worst of veganism. So I can definitely relate to a lot of women, and I want to help as many of them as I can. So thanks for the opportunity and having me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put the links to all your things below, but innate-nutrition.com, that's kind of your major hub, right, where people can find all of your work.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, right on. Yeah, thanks so much, Loren. That was a lot of fun, and we might have to do a follow up if so I think we didn't have time for some of the questions, but
I would love a follow-up. Sure.
right on. Well, yeah, thanks so much again, and stick around as I close out the show.
Sounds good.
That's it for today's show. There were a lot of tips in there to implement. She threw a lot of stuff at you, so if you have to listen to the episode multiple times, go back and listen to my other episodes on women's health. There's a lot of dots to connect here and a lot to unlearn from what we've been taught. But a lot of it comes back to mineral balance and supporting the metabolism. And I feel like those two are often neglected when practitioners recommend extreme diets, like a carb restrictive diet or a vegan diet that's protein restrictive diet, PUFA heavy diet. These all neglect the importance of the metabolism and the things that support the metabolism, which are carbohydrates and animal protein and copper and vitamin A, and all of these things play a role. But a lot of it is just not skipping breakfast, food frequency, not living in these extreme dietary paradigms, because we all did it. Loren did it. I did it. Different variations. And we crashed. And that's why we're passionate about sharing this information. And I think that Loren's doing awesome work. I think she has great posts on Instagram, and she's steering people in the right direction to look in the right places. I think that overexercising piece is really interesting because people are so addicted to going to the gym, and chances are that's harming more people than helping, especially when you combine high fructose corn syrup, blood sugar, dysregulation from not properly structuring your meals or the frequency of your meals, and the artificial light and the EMFs. It's a very stressful event for most people, the time at the gym. And although it feels good, soda is a roller coaster. Adrenaline feels good. So just because you feel good, a lot of people go off that feel good thing. Just because you're not hungry when you wake up in the morning, that doesn't mean that you're healthy. That's actually a sign of dysfunction. So this is actually one of those unlearning processes we have to go through. And where's the facts to back that up? Well, the facts to back that up is with a simple thermometer, body temperature thermometer, and your pulse rate. And most people have abnormally low body temperature, not only in the morning, but chronically, all the time. And there's an interesting article that came out recently on that the average human body temperature went down about 1 degree. And that has a huge effect on our metabolism, slowing it down, causing hypothyroidism, all sorts of problems. So I think a lot of health is just practicing balance, which has been a challenge for me the last 10 years, because you just get in your head and you get into all of these philosophies that are extreme and not in alignment with human physiology. And a lot of people, when they're stressed, when they're moving homes, when they have a lot going on, that's when they cut back their food. But it's actually the opposite. When you're stressed, when you have a lot going on, you don't need less food, you need more food. If you're preparing to move, you need more food. If you're undergoing any kind of stressful event, a breakup, a job change, a move, then you need more food, not less. And everyone wants meal plans and all these things. It's really about finding where you're at. I just spoke with a client in Greece, did a consult with him, and he said that he only has access to beef and lamb. So he doesn't have bison or elk or deer. He just has beef and lamb. And I said, make that a large part of your daily meals. A little bit of beef in the morning, a little bit of lamb for lunch or dinner. And it really depends where you're located on the type of meals that you'll have. Does sourdough bread and eggs work for you in the morning like it does for me? You have to experiment. Does fruit and bone broth work for you? You have to experiment. So try different food combinations. Find recipes that are pro-metabolic. And have fun with it. Have fun with experimenting. Don't get stressed out about food. And don't worry about all the little things and gluten and oxalates. And it's all super heady and you'll just get stressed out. So don't sweat the small stuff. Take your Shilajit, take your Mitolife Panacea, and you'll be all good. So if you want to check out Loren's work, you can go to innate-nutrition.com, and I'll put the link below to that. And she has her Instagram there, which is Innate Functional Nutrition on Instagram. And just super helpful. If you're a woman, especially going through issues, recovering from birth control, hormones are out of whack, she would be a great person to speak with. And if you want to look at my recommended products, you can go to matt-blackburn.com. I have all the products up there that I use, and most of them have discount codes, so you'll save a little bit of money there. And I also have mitolife.co, and that is my Mitolife branded products. So I have vitamin E, vitamin K, called Purely K, which doesn't have zinc or hormone D in it. I have a Panacea Pure Shilajit product and enzyme products a digestive enzyme, a systemic enzyme, and a dairy enzyme that I just came out with, which is awesome if you like to eat ice cream but don't do well with cow dairy. You might want to try out the dairy absorb so you can enjoy high quality organic ice cream, which can be a beneficial food. Today's quote is by Kate Deering from her book, How to Heal Your Metabolism. The fact that animals like chipmunks and bears eat a lot of nuts and seeds before hibernation should be an indication that nuts and seeds are not as supportive to a high-running metabolism like Americans have been led to believe. Think about this for a second. Hibernation is characterized as a time of low body temperature, low heart rate, low pulse, low breathing rate, and low metabolic rate. It could be described as a metabolic depression. Animals that hibernate need to store enough fat and energy to keep them alive for the 4 to 8 months they don't eat. Yes, these animals eat nothing for as long as 8 months. A slow metabolic rate is ideal for hibernating animals, but for health-conscious humans, a slow metabolic rate is not ideal or desirable. Humans are not designed to hibernate, yet we continue to eat foods like nuts and seeds that are anti-metabolic. Why? Because the nut and health industry has told us to eat them. In the last 10 to 20 years, nuts and seeds have been advertised as a healthy option for protein and heart-healthy fat. While the nut crop reached an increasing revenue of almost $8 billion in 2012, for nut farmers and the companies that sell nuts, it seems to make sense that we are seeing more advertised health benefits of nut eating. The industry promotes nuts as high-protein, antioxidant-rich food packed full of healthy, unsaturated fats that help lower cholesterol. The question remains, are these statements completely true?